There are many things that we do as caregivers to help our kids feel better when they're anxious or scared. We tell them that things are safe when they think that they're dangerous. We reassure them that things will be okay when they're nervous or worried. We check the closet for monsters when they're scared to fall asleep at night. Or we double check their homework for them so that we can know that they didn't make any mistakes. These efforts, while all very well intentioned, can actually sometimes end up feeding that anxiety and reinforcing it and making it worse in the long run. So JD, I have you here today to talk about accommodating and safety behaviors, and I thought a great place to start would be, where do you see this come up? So in your experience, where do you see parents most often trying to accommodate those fears or provide that reassurance?
Yeah, in terms of eating disorders, I think it's very often around food exposures, that sort of thing. And then in terms of safety behaviors, I think it's often around weight and offering a lot of reassurance around not gaining too much weight, that sort of thing. So I think those are really common.
Oh, the weight example is a great one because, we talked about how these are behaviors that actually can end up, even though they're well-intentioned, feeding that fear. And this is a great example where your child's afraid of gaining weight and you're like, oh, no, we're not you won't gain too much, or we won't let you gain weight. Mm-hmm. It's telling them that that is something to be worried about, or that is something to be afraid of. So it ends up feeding that fear and that worry for them.
Yeah, and I think that one is sort of particularly makes it a shared fear. So it's really reinforcing what the eating disorder is telling them instead of having another narrative. And honestly, I think for most kids, unless somebody's developing an eating disorder as an adult, they are going to gain weight. They're growing people with changing bodies. And so I think it can backfire in a lot of ways when we sort of take that path out of what's in front of us immediately.
Yeah. You mentioned, weight-specific examples, but I also think about accommodation a lot when it comes to ARFID. So in ARFID, we see a lot of, accommodating of preferences by only serving those really super safe foods, or even a lot of reassurance or other routines built in, like checking labels on things before their kid eats, or saying, no, you're not going to choke, or no, you won't get sick, and providing that reassurance at every meal. What advice would you have for parents who may need to kind of take the plunge here and, again, pull back on that reassurance or stop the accommodating and, now they're in the position of having to face their child's distress or really feel their child's anxiety? What advice would you give to them to give them the courage to start doing these things?
Yeah, well, I think working on all the discussion skills is really, really helpful. And then I think one thing that was a very helpful gut check for me is with every decision I would think about, is this more likely to lead to recovery or to keep her sick? And that was really helpful because that was my goal, to go toward recovery. And in some ways, it's like, if this is what the eating disorder really wants, and I keep doing what the eating disorder really wants, how is the eating disorder going to be gone? So sometimes I'll use the analogy with people that if you have an unwelcome house guest, don't put mints on the pillow.
Yes. That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah. So beginning to pull back from that. And every time you do it, you're building sort of that muscle of, we survived it. We survived that. And so then instead of the accommodating and reassurance seeking being what is starting to build, it's the, hey, I can do this, that starts to build.